Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the September 3rd, 2013 meeting of the Downers Grove Village Council. It's my privilege to call this meeting to order. There are copies of our agenda on either side of the room. If you haven't already done so, please avail yourself of a copy, and we encourage you to follow along with our proceedings tonight. There will be multiple opportunities for public comment, both with respect to the items that we will be voting on tonight, as well as a segment that is referred to as public comments of a general nature, where any questions or comments of a general nature with respect to items not appearing on our agenda tonight will be entertained by the council. It is our custom to begin our meetings by reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. So at this point in time, I would invite everyone to please rise and join us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Now we're all back from our long Labor Day holiday. Hopefully everybody enjoyed that safely. I'd now like to ask our fine village clerk to please call the roll.
Commissioner Jose?
Here.
Commissioner Olson?
Here.
Commissioner Rankin? Here. Commissioner Barnett? Commissioner Neustadt?
Here.
Commissioner Durkin?
Here.
Mayor Tully?
Here. Thank you very much. That brings us to item 3 on our agenda, which pertains to minutes of prior council meetings, and we have 2 sets of minutes on the agenda tonight for review and approval. First, our council meeting minutes from our regular meeting on August 20th, 2013, and next, our long-range plan meeting of that same date. Are there any questions or comments from any members of the council with respect to either one of the sets of minutes? Commissioner Olson.
Mayor Tully, I just want to note that I did share a couple minor corrections with the clerk regarding my comments.
Okay, those will be summarily rejected.
Well, I would ask that they would.
Just kidding. Just kidding. Thank you for sharing those with the clerk. Any other questions or comments or changes from members of the council with respect to either sets of minutes? Hearing none. We have a motion to approve, please.
So moved.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? None. They're approved. That brings us to item 4 on our agenda, public comments of a general nature. As mentioned earlier, this is where we invite any members of our audience to please come forward with any questions or comments of a general nature with respect to items that are not on our regular agenda for the rest of the evening. The protocol is, if you have any questions or comments, to please come down to the podium, give us your name and address, and we would welcome hearing from you. And I see we have some public comment tonight. Please come on down. Good evening and welcome.
Good evening. Glad to be here. I'm Pastor Don Zimmerman, First Baptist in Downers Grove. We've been here since 1851, not I, but our church. I actually came in 1976, so I've been around quite a while myself. And I am here to talk about the stormwater issue, and just wanted to share a couple thoughts with you that we've put together here. We do respect that the storm utility versus taxation has been properly litigated. However, we do not believe that it eliminates the issues of fairness that nonprofits should be included in its participation. The true goal of the storm utility is to assess the proper fees based on usage or created stormwater runoff, not property value. The same principle that exists excludes churches from paying the roads, fire, and police protection, and the nonprofits are protected from governmental action. It's very proper to create a utility to properly assess the true cost of stormwater runoff to the appropriate entities. It is not appropriate, however, to tax entities that were excluded from taxation to begin with. Finally, Mayor Tully, you stated the storm utility fee is more like an enterprise fund than in reality is a capital investment or infrastructure fund. Nonprofits are exempt from infrastructure projects and capital investment funds, whether the fund is for building roads, building bridges, building water treatment facilities, or any infrastructure improvements. This is not a legal definition, but a founding principle in our Constitution. And we do feel like there's a precedent being set here that has not been true in all of the relationship that we as a church have had with this community over all these years. And it's really not respecting the place and the contributions that these churches and the nonprofits make to the community. As I was thinking back through the many who come to our doors every single day, we have a stream of homeless and hopeless and people struggling in all kinds of ways that that we care for. We have one ministry that this past year distributed 1.4 million pounds of food to this community and other communities around, soup kitchens, all kinds of different pantries and so forth. So there's many, many ways in which we contribute to this community. And this beginning of taxation, as I've looked at the reasoning for why this goes on, why you believe this is an exception, I believe that that same reasoning could be carried out to taxing for everything down the road, nonprofits, and I think you would destroy many of the nonprofits in your community. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor.
Pastor Scott Oberle, First Congregational UCC here in Downers Grove. I want to talk just a little bit about checks and balances of the stormwater fees. We respect the transparent budgeting process of the village that has participated in it for the last 10 years and have no doubt that this current village council will continue in that process. However, that does not preclude future village councils from taking a budgeting process into closed executive sessions. Re-election is not a timely deterrent to hold a village council accountable for excessive rate increases. And so a utility commission or independent body gives an immediate accountability to stop excessive rate increases. It would have the ability to rule immediately on every rate increase, and the lack of such utility commission or independent board does not allow Downers Grove residents to stop increases. We are just as vulnerable here as we were increases from the city of Chicago. Currently, there are not enough checks and balances we feel available to the residents in holding their government accountable in a timely manner. Second thing that I'd like to address is while churches, Don touched on this, play a unique role in our society, in many ways they are the final safety net for those who cannot able to keep themselves above treading water. The need for services has increased each year over the past 10 years and grown as tax revenues have shrunk for all levels of government, and we recognize this. By placing this excessive burden of the stormwater fee on institutions that provide these final safety nets, a greater burden is placed on the truly poorest of our community. And I know I've said that before, but I really think there's a value, not just for me, for the churches, but I also think for the hospitals and schools and other non-for-profits. We talked about the food ministry. We have approximately 4,500 people coming in on a daily basis for our Hope's Front Door and just for emergency services, so that the gap is growing between the rich and the poor in our country. And I worry that exponential increases in stormwater will, over time, might not do so this year, but over time, really limit our ability to do some of the things that we do best as non-for-profits. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor.
Hi, I'm Kirk Moore from St. Paul's United Church of Christ in Downers Grove, and I want to talk about sharing the burden equally in regards to the stormwater utility. I know that that's been an ongoing talking point and a stated goal of the stormwater utility. Share the burden equally among the residents, commercial government, individual, nonprofit. The thing is that when you place the burden on the nonprofits, you place an increased burden on a very small minority of Downers Grove residents. It's not a guess. I guess it's an educated guess. Only 15 or 20% of the residents in Downers Grove support a church financially. And so all the residents of Downers Grove don't support churches financially. All the residents of Downers Grove do support the Park District, an organization that was exempted and while still having this strong tax base behind them. I think that puts an undue burden on the nonprofits and doesn't achieve this fair sharing of the burden together that I think that is the stated council's goal. And I think by doing that, it hurts the poor, it punishes those who choose to worship in a church and support their churches financially, and it just doesn't meet the equal distribution burden that I think that you've placed on yourselves in the whole process. Lastly, I would like to thank you for your commitment to looking at the processes for credits and how they're probably, I think that maybe you've even said this, that there's undue burden in terms of the application prices and the financial burden and the time burden to try to make it. It's as if the impetus is on, well, you have to prove that you are this, you are this, you are this, and you got to jump through so many hoops that nobody wants to do it. So I thank you for your commitment to hopefully reassessing that and looking at the credit process. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and thank you for being here again. It's always nice to see you. And we've enjoyed and appreciated this ongoing dialogue. I think it's very important to have, and no doubt you read in the press and heard some of the comments from a recent meeting where we talked about where the stormwater utility has been so far, because obviously this is a new thing in Downers Grove. It's a new thing in DuPage County, although I understand other communities are looking at doing something very similar, although I'm sure they'll tailor it to fit their particular community. And from day one, when this was implemented, we always discussed that we would, in fact, see how it goes, if there were changes that needed to be made that made sense and didn't undermine the whole purpose of it, which is to provide funds for a indisputably needed capital need within our community, that we would consider that. We've already proposed some changes here and there. We're continuing that conversation. As you no doubt will recall from, I think it was last week or a couple weeks ago, we discussed some possibilities about, rather than removing faith-based not-for-profits from the equation, figuring out creative ways to ameliorate to some degree the impact in a way that would be also fair to even for-profit charitable organizations, because it gets very complicated once you start removing people and looking at why one person is being removed and not another. The current system, of course, looks at not so much exemptions, but the exemptions are based on various things like the Park District that happens to have lots and lots of open space that can be used for, among other things, stormwater retention and detention. So that actually adds a lot of value and advances the goal to the ultimate mission of all this, which is to maintain a proper, forward-looking stormwater infrastructure and maintenance system that is not only serving our community in times of events like the April rains that we had, but also complying with federal law and county regulations when it comes to stormwater, which are things we don't have an option. We have to do that. And they're expensive, and we have to pay for them. No one has suggested that we shouldn't do those things. No one suggested that we don't have to come up with the funds to pay for it. The only debate has been what's the best way to go about it. We used to do it a different way. We're now doing it the current way. We are open to exploring creative ways to perhaps fairly and equitably ameliorate the burden in ways that advance the goals of the ultimate program. So we welcome and continue that dialogue with you. The one thing that I want to make very clear, and I'm certain I speak for all of my colleagues when I say so and in the entire village, is that nobody disrespects in any way, shape, or form the contributions of our community's not-for-profits, whether they be faith-based or otherwise. In fact, I would probably hazard to say that collectively amongst us, we've all spent personally hundreds of hours, if not more, in support of various not-for-profit organizations for the betterment of our community. Pastor, you and I both serve on the board of directors of Hope's Front Door, formerly known as the Walk-In Ministry of Hope, and have for many years. So I don't think there's anybody in this room that would suggest for a moment that any of this is in any way, shape, or form an attack or a disrespect of any not-for-profit organization, much less faith-based organizations, nor are we in any way, shape, or form trying to punish those who choose to worship and in the way they choose to worship. That is the last thing this would ever be about. And certainly there's no intention to slowly erode and shift things away, and I know there's been some concern raised by that due to possibilities being discussed by DuPage County, but I can't control DuPage County. That's a long way down the road. We've been assured that there will be a very open and engaged process at the county level. What we're trying to do is what best fits Downers Grove in our current needs. And in terms of accountability, I don't want to speak for any of our colleagues on the DuPage County Board, but this is about as accountable as it gets. I mean, we're having a dialogue. We're doing it on a weekly basis. We're actually talking about ways that we might be able to embrace some of the things, recognize and embrace some of the things that you're raising, but in a way that is fair for everyone. And obviously, fairness and equity are important here. and yet we obviously can't undermine the entire system in doing so. So I just want to make that very clear. And again, there are those who disagree with me, but I do view this more like water, because it's sort of water that comes out of the tap. It's water that flows from the sky and runs across your property, and we have to do something with it. And again, we don't have any choice. We have to, and we have to do it in compliance with federal law. And that's something that not-for-profits aren't exempt from, and no one has suggested that that somehow is an attack on non-for-profits or an undermining of the ability to worship. But we fully appreciate and understand your concerns and your points, and again, appreciate you being here. We are continuing to discuss some possible options, and we thank you for doing that alongside with us. So thank you for being here and for your comments. Any other questions or comments of a general nature with respect to items not appearing on our agenda tonight? Thank you. Well, hearing none, that moves us to item 5 on our agenda, council member reports. We'll start to the far left with Commissioner Barnett. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor. Sorry about being late, guys. I have nothing this evening.
Thank you, Commissioner Olson.
None?
No 5K updates? I saw you run past my house at 40 miles an hour.
Well, Commissioner Durkin, if you must say, I ran, in the interim since our last council meeting, there were 2 5Ks. St. Mary of Gosston 5K, which was an excellent, well-run race, and also the Labor of Love race put on by the Downers Grove Lions Club on Labor Day, which was also an excellent race. I believe it was their largest race to date, their 5th annual. So looking forward to being back next year and running past your house again. I thought about waving, but you know, next year you should come on.
You're too fast.
I guess so.
How were the street surfaces, more importantly?
They were very good. I had no trip hazards, unlike when I run the Chicago Marathon, when I think I might fall into a pit when I'm running on Archer Avenue. But that's another story.
Well, thank you. I'm glad you had no report tonight. Commissioner Neustadt.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to let everybody know to get ready for the recycling extravaganza, which is coming up on September 28th, and then the following week is Amnesty Day. It's really important that we do the recycling first and try to get your used items to the recycling event before you put them out on the curb and then to the landfill. So you can check our website for more information on what are accepted items at both the extravaganza and at Amnesty Day. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Durkin.
I deferred my time to Commissioner Olson.
Wisely done. Commissioner Rankin.
I have no report, thank you.
Commissioner Jose.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to give a thanks, a shout out to the folks on Red Shift and the Downers Grove Fire Department. I had an opportunity to do a ride along with them about a week and a half ago, and it was a great experience to get a flavor of what it is that they see on a day-to-day basis. Got to give a little hand in helping to reconstruct a little bit of their training facility at Station 1. Then they put me through a portion of it in full gear. I say a portion because they're in a lot better shape than I am. No one's ever accused me of being in particularly good shape. And, they pulled me out of there after probably about 10 minutes. Responded to a car accident on Fairview, a full cardiac arrest later on, and then a gas leak at a local business that resulted in it being shut down. And even got to tour the old Station 4 up on Finn. So it's a nice snapshot of what it is that our fire department does on a daily basis. And I hope that if there are any residents out there that would like to do a ride along like that, they'll call the village staff and maybe they can get a little bit of a glimpse too. But I thought it was very helpful to have that experience and moving forward, being able to draw on that a little bit and making decisions down the road. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. And I'll just point out a couple of things. First of all, even though it's not until September 19th, I want to make sure that all residents, because we all deal with the reliability of electrical service in one way or the other, and I know the recent powerful storm that we had some lights flickering in town, and there were some areas without power. The village will be hosting its 3rd annual ComEd Town Hall meeting on Thursday, September 19th, 2013 at 7:00 p.m. It will be held this year at the Public Works Building at 5101 Walnut Avenue. This is part of the village's ongoing efforts to enhance and improve the reliability of electrical service throughout the village. We began this a number of years ago, 3 years ago, when we had some extraordinary storm events that kept a lot of our residents without power for an unacceptable long period of time. And through our efforts working with ComEd, a number of steps have been taken, a lot of tree trimming, which can be a big culprit for down power lines, but also improvements in terms of infrastructure. And I was just talking to a resident earlier tonight over in the Deer Creek subdivision who said that based on our efforts and continuing to work very closely with ComEd, including holding these town hall meetings, that their service has been upgraded, and hopefully they will not be seeing the blackouts and the outages that they have experienced in the past. So for those who have experienced any issues recently, we would encourage you to come to the meeting, because not only will you have an opportunity here from the village in terms of what our efforts have been in continuing to identify and work with ComEd to improve service in our community, but every year we have quite a terrific representation from senior ComEd staff and executives who you can speak to firsthand and can respond to you firsthand with respect to your areas. And my favorite part of it is that there's always a map up on the wall that has their secret code for how they define certain parts of our community, and it's really nice to be able to refer in the same language to what they understand as an area and what you understand as an area. And I've always felt that after the meeting ends, there's always at least some better understanding and recognition of what needs to be done in order to improve the situation. So I would strongly encourage both residents, residential and business owners alike, to please come to the meeting and share directly with ComEd and us any issues that you may have. So you'll be hearing about this again, but want to make sure that we say this often, so that we make sure that we can maximize the ability to meet with ComEd representatives.
And Mayor, I'll chime in that the reliability report that will be discussed at that meeting will be available on the village website by tomorrow afternoon. So check there in advance of the meeting and see how your circuit is performing according to the ComEd numbers. Thank you.
Terrific. Thank you very much. Actually, the other two items I will keep until the mayor's report, so we'll move on. That brings us to item 6 on our agenda, public hearings. We have no public hearings tonight, so that takes us right to item 7, our consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments from any members of the audience with respect to any of the items on the consent agenda? Any questions or comments from members of the council with respect to any items on the consent agenda? Hearing none. May I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Neustadt?
Aye.
Commissioner Durkin?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner Rankin?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye. The consent agenda passes unanimously. That brings us to our active agenda. We have one item under item 8. That is 8A. Do I have a motion to adopt an ordinance amending stormwater utility provisions?
Mayor Tully, I move to adopt an ordinance amending stormwater utility provisions as presented.
Second.
Any questions or comments from any members of the audience? Well, we kind of had questions and comments on this earlier, but any questions or comments from members of the village council? Commissioner Rankin?
I know that we're going to talk about some of these issues in the future, not what we're voting on tonight. Will that include a discussion about removing the cap on incentives and credits?
Yes, all the questions, comments, and issues that the council directed staff to look into further, we'll have answers and comments on those in about 2 weeks, and we'll find the right time and place to have more dialogue about those issues.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Durkin?
Dave, those comments, questions, thoughts are from last week, correct? Or the last meeting?
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you. And actually, the combination of Village Manager Fielman and Commissioner Rankin's comments basically said what I was going to say, so that's all I have to add. There being no further questions or comments, roll call, please.
Commissioner Neustadt?
Aye.
Commissioner Durkin?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner Rankin?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye. Matter passes unanimously. That brings us to the end of our active agenda and to item 9, our first reading or workshop agenda, when we entertain items for presentation and discussion purposes only and potential action at a future point in time. Custom dictates that we turn the meeting over to staff for a presentation. Manager Fielman.
There are 3 items on tonight's first reading agenda. The first one I'm very happy to introduce. It's a redevelopment project on Ogden Avenue. And here to present this item is our Community Development Director, Tom Dabrine.
Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Good evening.
We have a petition that is before you, and the petitioner is requesting a special use approval to construct an 1,800-square-foot coffee shop restaurant building with a drive-through lane at 1149 Ogden Avenue. And we're looking for approval on the September 10th active agenda. The proposed property is in the B3 General Services and Highway Business District and is currently vacant. It's located about there. Looks like the arrow slipped slightly, but it is located about there. The coffee shop is a special use with a drive-through. If it has a drive-through, it's a special use and allowed special use in the B3 district. And that is the B3 district. So we zoom in a little bit on an aerial. You'll see a vacant property there, no surprise. But that's what it looks like not too long ago. By the air, if you go to the ground about a month and a half ago, it looked a little bit like this. So certainly a pretty grand improvement if it, assuming it proceeds. The building has pretty much a standard design for a Starbucks, and this is just showing the east side and the front, as you would see it from Ogden Avenue. This is another good improvement for the site. It shows significant amounts of landscaping, new building, drive-through, and the like. I will get to some of the specifics as well, but I wanted to point out a couple of benefits here. First of all, we're taking a vacant challenge site, making it productive with a nationally known drive-through product, that is Starbucks. We're taking 2 access points along Ogden Avenue and reducing it to 1 limited access point. A little bit of a change from the packet that you have where we weren't so sure exactly what's happening. We're still not sure exactly what's happening, but we know that we're looking at a limited access point along Ogden now. We're gaining a cross-access agreement with the property to the west, should that redevelop at some point in the future, and then adjustments are being made in the landscaping plan to address a question that came up at the Plan Commission to improve the visibility and visibility towards what hopefully is new signage for people who might be seeking the orthodontic care to the south. So here again is an aerial of the property in hand. The orange arrows represent, on the left side of the blue box, represent the cross access in the future. We've got full access onto Prince towards the north and then one-way outbound on the south, and these are on the east side of the site along Prince. And then again, we're kind of marking where the 2 access points are now, and that at some point will become one. The exact location we're still working on, and I'll comment on that again in the future. We're also looking at a request for a variation. It's a front yard variation, and that gets to be a little confusing for everyone, but the variation itself is to the side of the building. It's considered a front yard in our zoning ordinance because it's adjacent to the street. A 25-foot variation is, a 25-foot setback is required. We have as an allowable, in our zoning ordinance, allowable variation request for 12.5 feet, and that's what's being requested here in approximately the location shown here. So in summary, all of the bulk requirements from the zoning ordinance are met, but for that 12.5-foot front yard setback request for a variation along Prince Street. And it's consistent with our comprehensive plan. Comprehensive plan specifically calls for auto-oriented corridor commercial development. This certainly fits the bill there. It calls for redevelopment of the underutilized and vacant properties with high-quality new uses and structures. Certainly Starbucks is that. And it reduces the number of access points along Ogden Avenue from 2 full driveways to 1 partial. The Plan Commission met on August 5th, 2013. About a month ago, they determined that the standards were met for approval of a special use, as is found in Section 28.1902 of our zoning ordinance. And the standards were also met for granting the allowed 12.5-foot variance, which again is a specifically allowed variance in Section 28.1802 of the zoning ordinance. And then we're suggesting that we follow the typical process that would require IDOT to issue a driveway permit prior to the village's the village's issuance of a building permit. If this were not a special use, and we had a similarly sized building with similar impacts, it's the exact same process we would follow there. We're asking for that process now. Be happy to try to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. DeBreiner. We'll start with any questions from the audience with respect to this item and the proposed special use. Any questions from the audience? Hearing none, any questions from Village Council? Commissioner Durkin.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I just have a couple questions, and I apologize, I didn't get these out earlier. I had the opportunity this past holiday weekend to be in Kildare area, and I noticed on some of their busy thoroughfares, especially Route 12, I believe it is, you know, they've got a lot of commercial real estate up and down there, and it's name brands, as we know, with Starbucks coming here. And they had some really neat looking buildings. And I just thought of it now. As we sit here and we continuously talk and try to be creative in changing the atmosphere of Ogden Avenue as we know it today, do we have any say or any desire to change some of the architectural buildings that we see coming before us? You know, I look at these plans, this to me looks like it's going to be a cookie cutter of the Oak Brook facility on Butterfield Road. I mean, is there anything we can do? Is this in the TIF district?
It is in the TIF district, and the questions that you're asking, I think, are most appropriately answered by the Village Council in some policy discussions. Certainly, design aspects and screening aspects came up in the comprehensive plan, and Tom just showed us how those are addressed. But if the council has a desire to start more comprehensively looking at the design elements of the building on a mandatory basis, or as part of special uses, or as part of TIF projects, it's certainly something that's available to us. Was not contemplated as part of this proposal.
I understand it. I'm very grateful that this is coming. I know Michael Cassa and his team has done a great job working this. I remember, you know, he's been talking about this for quite a while. So to see it come here, this is great news, and I truly support this. But I just, you know, if we're going to continuously talk about changing, you know, the makeup of Ogden Avenue, I think this is an area we should look at. I know in my previous life we did that. You know, when buildings came before us, we looked at changing the architectural. I mean, we see it in Hinsdale. You know, we see it with Lake Forest, with Banks and McDonald's, and you name it. I just think that's something maybe we as a collective body we could talk about if there's an interest in doing it, especially if it's a special use that they're asking for, and if it's in the TIF district. I think there's, you know, if we really want to see change in Ogden, I think these are the areas that could easily be done. And it's not a matter of changing it drastically. I'm not looking to do that. But just something a little bit different that everybody says, you know, I mean, everybody can tell you that the McDonald's in Hinsdale on York Road mirrors Grom Mill. I mean, what does this mirror? Butterfield? It's just an example. But I truly support this. I appreciate staff time. I'm grateful that Starbucks wants to come to our town and expand in it. And I'll be supporting this. But just a couple questions that I had that just came up.
Well, it is a policy issue, and it's not infrequent that some item will come before us and has the unfortunate situation of being the item that sparks a conversation on a broader policy level. So I think that's what Commissioner Durkin is talking about, is nothing with respect to this application, but it's a broader question that only comes up because of the focus on the special use here. And I think the answer would be, as Manager Fielman stated, was we'd either have to change our special use criteria from what they currently are to include that kind of review and evaluation. That's not currently the case, certainly not to the extent that you're discussing. Or if we wanted to put it on a list someday,
yeah, I mean, maybe that's what we
it would be something akin to a design pattern book for Ogden Avenue, not unlike what we've had for the downtown, which isn't mandatory. But in my experience, if you have out there a preferred aesthetic criteria for various buildings along an economic corridor, and that is well-known and reasonable, then when businesses come to town, they're almost, not always, but almost too happy to try to accommodate them, because in fact, they'd rather know what all the rules are and then to make their decisions and go forward, rather than going through some kind of a hearing where things are then asked about this placement of this tree and where that brick is and whatnot. So that kind of pattern booklet might be something we can think about down the road, although if I remember the effort that went into the downtown pattern book, it's probably a significant effort, and we probably want to involve the Architectural Design Review Board and the Plan Commission if we were going to go that route, but certainly a policy decision. Other questions from the council? Commissioner Olson?
I'd just like to comment, this is something that has gotten attention in our community. I have heard from residents more about this item in a positive manner than any other development I've heard about, in my short time here. People are very excited to have a drive-through, another Starbucks. It's very popular right now. So among people that I know in the community, I think people are very excited about the opportunity here. And I certainly I would be excited to look at some, what the Mayor and Commissioner Durkin are suggesting for maybe some patterns or architectural designs that we might prefer in the future and future developments. But I think for this site, the improvement from what it is now to what it is going to be and the usefulness to the community, and in addition to the sales tax revenue it will provide to the community, I think this is just a great benefit. And so I'm very, very thrilled and thank the staff and Michael Casa, Tom J. Briner for all their work in allowing this to happen, working with IDOT and others involved, and hope we can bring this to a successful conclusion. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Neustadt?
Thank you, Mayor. As to the aesthetics, I think, if you remember back to what it was before, it was a vacant lot. It was all glass, sometimes boarded up, sometimes not. And I would say it's a great improvement. And, the connection to the downtown pattern book is important because that is a tool that we have, but it's not mandatory. I'm sure that this national chain has a few different varieties that they can use, but in this particular case, this particular store fits on this lot, which was probably what attracted them to this position. I'm very confident that this comports exactly with our comp plan. This is something that we've worked and had a lot of meetings to get our comprehensive plan to the point where it was, so a development like this could come in and really fit itself into our future plans and our future land use. The cross connection to the lot to the west is very intriguing to me. I look forward to more expansion there. And then, it's a small change, but it's something that came out of a conversation at the Plan Commission that Tom highlighted about some landscaping changes and amendments for not only the visibility of signage, but also for pedestrians, especially with the high school being so close. That'll be a great benefit as cars are leaving the site from the drive-through area. I really do think that this corner is going to kind of blend in nicely with the Jewel across the street as a newer building, and then add and hopefully spur more development in this small corridor in the TIF district. So I look forward to this beginning more projects coming. Michael Casa and his crew at the EDC have done a great job. Our staff obviously has helped shepherd this to the point it is now, and look forward to shovel in dirt very soon. So thank you to everybody for your hard work on this this project.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other questions from members of the council? I'll just add that I'm thrilled to see this project come forward because obviously Ogden Avenue has been a major focus since the late 90s and probably earlier. In fact, it was earlier. So anytime we can have a high-quality development come to particularly a parcel that right now is laying fallow is a big accomplishment, and especially one that apparently has generated as much buzz in the community as Commissioner Olson has described. Certainly something we're welcome to have, and also want to join in thanking our staff and Michael Casa and his team with working with the petitioner to bring this before us. The real question is whether it meets the criteria for a special use, and I think the answer is an unqualified yes. This is exactly the kind of use that has been contemplated, and in fact already exists on Ogden Avenue in every way, shape, and form. So there are no brainers from I'm concerned. The only then question is whether the criteria for a variation with respect to the front setback under section 28.182 of our code have been met. And as was pointed out at the Plan Commission level, and as well known, there are lots of challenges with respect to lot depth along Ogden Avenue. And in order to encourage and facilitate this kind of development, I think we have to be reasonably flexible with respect to some of these things. So I think a variation, given the physical hardship of having to meet this otherwise setback requirements for the particular lot, I think has been met in this situation, has been shown to be the case. So I am currently leaning heavily in support of both requests. Any other questions from the council or the audience? Thank you very much. It brings us to item 9B.
Which is the consideration of an award of contract for the fall roadway patching project. And here to present additional information on this item is our Public Works Director, Nan Newland.
Good evening.
Good evening. I'm here to present a request to award a contract to Schroeder Asphalt Services of Huntley, Illinois, in the amount of $236,170 for the fall roadway patching project. This program is part of the village's annual road maintenance program, ST004 in the community investment plan. Earlier this year, we awarded 2 large contracts for street resurfacing. The first contract's complete. The second one is substantially complete. We also previously awarded a contract for seal coating and crack sealing. That contract is also complete. This contract allows us to patch sections of streets that we plan to get to approximately between the years 2015 and 2017 for resurfacing. And this will allow us to continue to plow and to sweep these streets until we are able to get into those neighborhoods and complete those resurfacings. The project was bid, the contract was bid. We received 5 bids, and Schroeder Asphalt was the low bidder for the project. They did complete this project for the village in 2012 and did a good job for us, and they've also completed similar projects for Forest Park, Warrenville, Northbrook, Streamwood, Vernon Hills, and Palatine. And we would like to recommend award of this contract to Schroeder Asphalt. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions for any members of the audience with respect to this proposed contract award? Any questions from members of the Village Council? Hearing none, thank you.
And finally tonight is the presentation of the long-range plan that we as a community and council have been working on over the past 4 months. 3 public meetings. I know all of us here in the room are very familiar with this document. There's a substantial amount of information available on the website, including the draft of the long-range plan. And so therefore, we're happy to answer any questions that the council or the community may have tonight.
Terrific, thank you. Well, this is certainly something that we've discussed on multiple occasions and in 3 different locations by my recollection. So we've been not only talking about it a great deal, but also moving around the venue in which we discuss it. I'll ask and invite if there are any questions from any members of the audience with respect to the proposed long-range plan at this point. Any question? I know, and by the way, even though we haven't met in here and hadn't necessarily been on television, at the prior 2 meetings, we did hear a number of questions and comments from members of the public who were in attendance at those meetings, all of which were greatly appreciated. So then I will ask if any members of the Village Council have any further comments or questions with respect to the proposed plan. Commissioner Neustadt.
Thank you, Mayor. I think there's one very important line in here. In the prepared documents for tonight, the long-range plan will direct the preparation of annual budget and the daily operations of the village. This is the beginning point of our budgeting process for next year. And as we go out in budget and then we go out and actually do the day-to-day operations, we'll be guided by this document. And I think we said it last time, it's not just the action items that we talked about so much, it's the day-to-day operations. And we can't forget that exceptional municipal services are one of our goals as an organization. And as Commissioner Jose saw on his ride-along not too long ago, we offer a lot of different services from a whole bunch of different departments. So this is just one part of a big process that we undertake each year. The long-range plan will help guide us for next year and the year beyond. And I think it's a great plan. I think it has a lot of input from not only the Village Council, but also from our residents. And I look forward to seeing many of the items implemented in the next and following years. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Other questions or comments, Commissioner Rankin?
I just wanted to say that I really appreciated the way the process went this year. I thought it was, from doing it in the previous year and then doing it this year, I thought we had a lot more opportunities for input, and I think because there were so many different times for people to provide input, I thought it was just a great process. So thank you very much for putting that together, and it was well done.
Thank you. I agree with Commissioner Rankin. The process worked exceptionally well this year, just showing that we're always building on past successes and making things even better. I just want to thank everyone for all the work and effort that went into this, both folks here on the dais as well as staff and members of the public that came to the meetings. I mean, again, this is something that is the product of now 3 meetings, and will be 1 more at least before it's formally adopted. And I will also say that it is an ambitious set of projects. Let's make no mistake, there's a lot of work here. But I think we all have a great deal of confidence in our staff's ability to accomplish many, if not all, of these things. But some of them may take more than 1 year to actually complete. But it is a very ambitious set of goals and accomplishments, and we seem to always raise the standard every year. We're now at the level where we ask staff to do, when there's 2 choices, we ask them to achieve both. And I'm sure that within 5 years, we'll be asking them to achieve everything. So you keep raising the bar, and you should be congratulated for doing so, because the community has very high expectations, deservedly so, and I'm always very impressed by our ability to deliver them. So thank you. Any other questions or comments on the proposed long-range plan?
Look forward to the draft budget presentation by the end of this month, and budget season starts officially on Saturday, October 5th. There will be more information, dates, times, ways you can participate as residents coming up. And with that, that ends our first reading tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. That brings us to item 10 on our agenda, the mayor's report. I do have 2 things I want to point out, both of which stem from this morning's meeting of the DuPage County Stormwater Management Committee, which I sit on as a representative of District 3, one of the municipal representatives from District 3. And just a couple things I thought would be of interest to the council and to the community is number one, showing that Downers Grove is once again sort of ahead of the curve. The county is looking at coming up with a system where they have pre-qualifications for a variety of different professional service providers like architects, engineers, and other consultants who normally would not be covered by the competitive bidding requirements, and are creating a website where every year or 2 companies would have to submit a great deal of information to become pre-qualified, and they would be listed on the website, all trying to expand their transparency in terms of contracts that are entered into with outfits that are not covered by the competitive bid requirements. I was quickly reminded, gee, where have I seen something like this before? So kudos to the county for doing that, but also, once again, an indication of where we are leaders in transparency. The other point that came up today that also reminded me of how Downers is on the cutting edge, bless you, is there was a presentation given on FEMA's community rating system and how that could be beneficial to communities who choose to get involved with it. For those of you who don't know, the Community Rating System, or CRS, recognizes and encourages community floodplain management activities that exceed the minimum National Flood Insurance Program standards, excuse me, and depending on the level of participation by a community, flood insurance premium rates for policyholders, meaning those of us who live here, can be reduced by as much as up to 45%. And actually, we saw a listing of what some of the dollar amounts are, and they're rather staggering. Besides the benefit of reduced insurance rates, CRS floodplain management activities enhance public safety, reduce damages to property and public infrastructure, avoid economic disruption and losses, reduce human suffering, and protect the environment. I wish the pastors were still here, because I'm going to make a point here of showing how we benefit even not-for-profits in this regard by our stormwater efforts. And you may now be asking me, why am I telling you all this about the FEMA community rating system? Well, of course, fans of Downers Grove will already know that our website contains a story about how effective stormwater policy can equal savings for residents. And if you haven't read it, I would encourage you to go to it, because the village's ongoing efforts to effectively manage stormwater, because we are participants in the CRS program. Interestingly enough, I was shocked at how few communities in DuPage County participate in this. And once again, it was a nice little shout out, because during the presentation, Downers Grove and a handful of other communities in DuPage County were highlighted as being participants in the CRS program and already providing this benefit for our residents. As our website story indicates, our efforts here to effectively manage stormwater will result in a 20% flood insurance premium discount for property owners within the floodplain as defined in Downers Grove, beginning May 1st, 2014. This is a 5% increase in discounts over the current rates as part of the National Flood Insurance Program. This is significant because due to our efforts in managing stormwater, in our town. Our CRS rating was improved from 7 to 6, and so that accounts for the improvement in the discounts. So the lower the number, the better the participation, and the better the savings for property owners. And the point I would have pointed out to the pastors who were here speaking earlier is this is an example of where we're benefiting all property owners in town through our stormwater management, for-profit and not-for-profit alike. And so I just wanted to share that we got a little shout out at the county, DuPage County Stormwater Management Committee this morning. It's one of the few communities in DuPage County that are currently on the leading edge of this and taking advantage of it, such that we're passing on these kind of saving opportunities to our residents. That ends my report and brings us to item 11, which is the manager's report. Mr. Fieldman.
No further report tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. It brings us to item 12, attorney's report. Ms.
Thank you,
Petrarca.
Mayor. Only one item tonight. That is an ordinance authorizing a special use with a zoning variation for 1149 Ogden Avenue to permit construction of a coffee shop restaurant with a drive-through use. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. It brings us to item 13, council member new business. Do any members of the village council have any items of new business they would like to share with the rest of the council? Commissioner Rankin.
I don't have new business, but I just wanted to jump on the end of your story, and just with a question. When I was reading that, it says that even if you are not in a floodplain, you can buy flood insurance because we have that rating. That's a significant benefit, isn't it?
That is correct. You can purchase national flood insurance through FEMA, even if you're not required to, and it's a great benefit, and people, if interested, should look into that program. It could pay dividends, so good point.
No, fair point. I mean, the savings are actually quite significant if you're in the floodplain, and even if you're not, the savings are also quite significant. So that's something that, again, I think is something to be celebrated, and also it goes to show some of the benefits of all our efforts. Anyway, back to new business. Any items of new business that any members of the council would like to share with their colleagues? Hearing none, that brings us to item 14. We cannot adjourn tonight. We need to adjourn into closed session. Do I have a motion to adjourn into closed session?
Mayor, I move to convene into closed session pursuant to Section 2C2 of the Illinois Open Meetings Act to consider collective negotiating matters between the village and its employees or their representatives.
Any questions or comments from any members of the council?